session, Nature Connection for the Littlest Learners. My name is Tim Richardson. I'm with the National Recreation Foundation, and we are partners with the Children in Nature Network. A little bit about my background. I'm the retired vice president at Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and that's not so important, except that it took a long time to figure out that I was having the most fun when I was working with the kids directly, and the higher I got, the money was great and all that, but I missed that day-to-day interaction. I remember one kid, one couple, one family, they came in, and this one kid was exuberant, fired up all the time. And his brother, younger brother, would come in, and he would be just really shrunken down and you know, almost invisible, sinking into a chair. And I come to learn that this family actually had been living in their car. They had a really difficult time. And why that's important to us now is every kid in America, in the world, has been living in their car one way or the other, right? So here's the big lesson I remember from my 30 years at Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And with every kid that comes in, you first have to see them. I see you. Because it's easy to be invisible if you're 6 years old or whatever age. I hear you. I hear you. Maybe you don't get to be heard at home or school or wherever else, but I hear you. And finally, I care about you. And that really is a litmus test for your engagement, because they're listening and learning and deciding if it's a safe place for them based on those three elements. And I miss those days tremendously. Well, we have a TED Talk type, and that's a tongue twister, TED Talk type. We have a TED Talk type presentation where we're going to have three folks who are leaders in the field of engaging young people, and they're going to share their thoughts, their insights. Now, before I introduce the first one, I do need to address our friends who are online. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to give you even more magic than we not the normal amount of magic, twice the magic through the internet. So there you go. So we're going to get started. And I did want to take you back to the people who heard kids, saw kids, and I'm reminded of Walt Disney. And they asked this guy when he was building Disneyland. He said, "Well, where do you come up with this stuff?" And he says, "Well, you know, I remembered when I was 10 years old, and I just go back to being 10 years old. What did I like to do? What would I want to do?" And that was how he organized Main Street and the Adventureland and all that. And so I would challenge all of us here to open our eyes, our hearts, our... Okay, hold on. Can I tell a secret? Okay, here's the here. Okay, shh. Everyone do it with me. Shh. Shh. Don't tell. Here's the secret. It's okay to steal good ideas. It's okay to, that's what we're here for. So who knows the name of the event here? Who knows? Anybody? What's it called? No one knows why we're here? Okay, this is called Call and Response. I'll read it, and then you will say after the word. So, children. Okay. And nature. Network. Now we're going to add something to that. When we say children, we're all going to imagine being 10 years old. Okay? And I want you to hold a child in your hand, a visible child, right? And then when we get to nature, I want you to put your arms up. You could be reaching for the stars. You could be a tree. You could be outside. Okay, and then when we get to network, put your hands together like this, because that's what we're here for. And the fact that you chose to be in this session means that you have a special place in your heart for moving the needle for these kids who need your services right now like no other generation in American history. They've been through hell. And your work is vital to their finding themselves, being safe, shedding some of that trauma. You are the ones that are going to make all that happen. So here we go. Call and response. Children. Okay. And nature. See, I'm going for the stars. That's what my fingers are doing. Okay. And network. Okay, so here's the part of the secret on that. Look around your table. Everyone here has a similar interest in children and nature. It's right here in the name. Children and Nature Network. That's us. So if you walk out of here with 2 or 3 really great ideas, 2 or 3 really good friends, this will have been a success. So again, I thank you for your time and attention. Now let's get on with the TED Talk. So a couple of housekeeping pieces on your tables are questions. So as sheets for writing your questions down, as we did with the last session. If you have something that a speaker presents that really hits a chord with you, make a little note that you'd like to get more information about that. We'll collect those at the end of the session of that person speaking, and then we'll ask the questions. So, please be thinking and writing your notes down. Am I missing any other key housekeeping things? Feel free to come and go as you like, but we really want you to take as much information away from here as you can, all right? So, without further ado, we are going to hear some lessons from the forest. Now, we have folks here that have devoted a big chunk of their lives and their daily work lives at the Fraser Center here in Atlanta, and it's a forest preschool program that supports kids in their natural curiosity, and they are one of the best at it. We're so happy that they could join us. So if I can have Christiane Williams and Dr. Gary Bingham, please come forward from Georgia State. Oh, no, go back down, go sit down. This is our family. For crying out loud, you saying happy birthday to Durley. What the heck's that all about? Okay, so let's try it again. This is our family, and we love them, and they're going to impart wisdom and knowledge upon us, and we're going to leave here better and smarter. Let's try it again. Okay, oh yay, Christiane Williams and Dr. Gary Bingham, come forward. There you go.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Christiane Williams. I am the instructional coordinator at the Fraser Center here in Atlanta. And this one next to me is...
Hi, Gary Bingham. I'm a professor at Georgia State University, and I work with young learners. So it's nice to see you all. As children, we all develop big ideas and big questions. We want to know how the world works. We want to discover things around us and truly understand the natural world. And our early experiences, of course, can set the foundation for later learning. And we know that with young learners especially, it's important that they have really wonderfully supportive experiences. But we oftentimes forget that teachers also come to us with all sorts of early experiences with the world around them. And some of those early experiences are not always helpful to their work with young learners, especially when it comes to getting them outside. Because teachers sometimes come from a place of fear towards certain things. They might, teachers, especially in our current early childhood setting where there's a lot of rules and regulations, when they get outside, sometimes they're really worried about what could happen for children's safety. And so sometimes that place of no is something we need to address when we work with teachers and, of course, support young learners in their learning. And we're going to talk to you about some of the big ideas and big questions of a project we've been working on for a year.
Something I found very interesting when talking to one of our teachers is I asked this question. I said, what stops you from entering the forest with your class? And she said very plainly, mostly wasps and bees and the fear of being stung. It's so valid, the fear of being stung, right? as Gary mentioned, those early experiences can lead to certain traumas or certain just dislikings of outside and nature in the forest. It happens. Everyone grew up with someone who doesn't like spiders or doesn't like lizards. It's a thing, right? Oh, sorry. Not yet.
We haven't practiced the slides together, yes. Oh, I'm going backwards. Well, there we go.
There you go. I just wanted to highlight the picture first off. Is that so? This classroom out. This is a young toddler, older, young twos, older threes classroom, and currently they're actually. I'm looking through a window in our building, and she's in our Five Senses garden with the group. Just wanted to highlight that for a minute. So we started this journey asking the question, what are the approaches that support teachers with varied experiences with nature to engage with children outside? So how do we take this, this large group of leaders and get them into the forest and get them excited in the forest with their children, right? So I think what we started, or the first step is to create some go-to lessons that can be applied to our forest. It's been a personal agenda for me, though, to have our teachers fall in love with nature. There's something so relaxing, so serene, something so calming, and there's this oneness that you get when you're in the forest. I think as we may know this by now. And to find ways to switch gears in our teacher brains, where we are more of a facilitator of wonder, and simply like an observer of the world around us. And then overall, these things lead to one of our biggest purposes, which is to support or to create a space where we can support child-led exploration. That's just as enticing as planned project-led lessons. So just to look at our forest at Fraser is that we sit on a 39-acre estate. I really don't know what those numbers mean, but it's really big. I'm there. I work there. So in the forest, it's there as well. And as I explore, of course, you start to get a grasp of what 39 acres actually looks like. But our program has both an adult program and a child development program. And in our child development program, we try to do our best to reflect what the national population of people with differing abilities and bring that into the population of our school and demographics of our school. So that typically looks like 1 in 4 friends. And with these two things, so with this very big and beautiful lush forest that we have that we sit on, plus the inclusive nature of our setting in our school, how could we best get our teachers out there with encouragement and support?
So we, of course, needed to organize our own ideas as we supported teachers in implementing their big ideas for how to be in nature. And let me just walk you through briefly, and these ideas have grown over time, and I'll explain how we use iterative design to support teachers. But the first was there's kind of like 4 big ideas or big takeaways we tried to conceptually organize our explorations in the forest around. And the first was just, how does one learn outside? Right? What does learning outside look like? How does one explore, observe, and document the learning process in the outdoor environment? Because this is a space that, again, when you live in a city like Atlanta, and a teacher comes to the Fraser Center, I mean, it's a very unique space to then have access to so much outside. Where in most early learning centers here in the city, you might have, a brick and concrete, a playground, and a little bit, a few bushes and a few other things. There's not a lot of nature except in the lovely park system that we have. So the first big idea was just how does one learn in nature? And the second one was, what is nature and what are the properties of nature? And so a lot of those lessons really focused on rocks and water and other things around nature that were embedded within the natural environment around us. And then we, of course, wanted teachers really to explore the forest and learn about the forest, learn about the plants that were there and the different types of things that were growing, and learn about how the forest changed over time, because this was a year-long investigation around the forest, and how does one observe and think about the changes and help children understand the changes. And then, of course, we were very interested in learning about the forest and what lived there. And of course, young learners are fascinated by all sorts of insects and all sorts of animals, birds and things. And of course, during the year, those things change in the forest too, right? And we talk a lot about habitats, we talk a lot about baby animals, animal families, and so there's a lot of exploration around the forest and what lives there, and this drives additional big questions that children want to explore. And we approached this with an iterative design process, which means we wanted to go back and forth with the school. Now, as a researcher and as a clinician, as someone who's the practice-based expert, Chris is the practice-based expert, I'm the research-based expert, we needed to form a partnership to work together. And this was a unique opportunity for us to co-design this process. And let me just walk you through this briefly. The co-design process really had kind of like 3 stages where we planned together. As part of planning, we really focused on building our team and considering who our team was that we wanted to organize our thinking around. And then we wanted to learn together as a research practice partnership network, right? Where we would read together. We found articles, of course, online. It helps to have a university system that can pull all the professional literature, of course, and then consider whether this would work for us. And then we developed a logic model, which of course in most projects, a logic model helps you know where you want to end the project, and then you can backward design to kind of all the activities that will support you getting there. And a logic model is really helpful too, because it kind of keeps you all honest and keeps you a shared focus on the goal for like what it might look like. And then of course we explored this process together. One thing I will tell you as someone that implements a lot of design-based research in schools is that if you don't do it with teachers, it will fail. 100% of the time, whatever your new approach is going to do, it's going to fail. So part of our work with teachers is also observing what they were doing and learning from them through this process, because we didn't want to design this gold standard approach to being outside in the forest that wouldn't work for these teachers in these classrooms with 2-year-olds and many of them with special needs. And so there's a lot of reasons to maybe not go out today. There might be something happening in the classroom. So we wanted to make sure we were observing and supporting teachers. And then of course we designed lesson plans to support teachers. And these lesson plans were on 1 page. As a former preschool teacher, I knew how helpful it was to have the lesson on 1 page so that you weren't rifling through this big manual. And of course, we have a manual we're currently finishing around our process, but the lesson plans could grab and go. So the teachers didn't always feel like they were being overwhelmed with paperwork. And then we had an implementation guide that kind of guided our coaching and support of teachers, where we wanted to know if they went out to the forest, what should we look for? What should they be doing? And this implementation guide helped us kind of figure out the active ingredients of what these lessons were supposed to do. And then right now we're finishing our implementation part of the project, where we're implementing lessons, we're getting feedback from teachers, and we're refining the model so that we can help really make sure that this design-based research is going to work for not only our teachers, but if other teachers were to come and, into the center, or if we're going to work with other programs, we could guide their process. Here's a quick picture of me in a stretched photo, but we also got teachers outside in our professional learning. We wanted to get them outside to get them experiencing the natural world around them, and sometimes this really got to where it's like, we're going outside for our professional learning session today, so wear sensible shoes, because oftentimes teachers were not prepared to just walk outside, and so we really wanted to bring all the learning outside. So we didn't do as many stand and delivers like this, but we were outside for a lot of professional learning to support the teachers.
Sorry. And yes, so after some initial, in-service trainings, talk through it, understand our ways around the forest, getting in the forest with them a little bit, I started seeing something that was so interesting across the school was these pathways for the teachers. And it took a lot of support, a lot of coaching, and modeling to try to help bridge some of these pathways. So this actually is a picture of the teacher from one of our first pictures who was in the 5 Senses Garden. Now we are in the thick of it. And that tree actually that fell over to the left is actually very important. In some of our first visits to the forest, that's what the children noticed and was like, oh my God, who lives under there? I don't know. And what, can you climb it? And I don't need, but my rain boots and all the questions, right? And so every time we go out, it looks a little different. And that's just something that I love to note about this picture. Anyway, so as you can see, we moved into the forest. And one of the lessons that Gary and his team created was ask teachers to use tools to explore. You know, some science standards attached to that, some science tools attached to that, so they can really get that basis of exploration in there. This time they used binoculars in this picture, and there were lessons that suggested documentation or suggested other tools as well, as we're gonna see. So in an older classroom, they did some tree rubbings, they did some tree observations. They come out with their pens and, or not pens, their clipboards and their papers to write down anything that they may see, to draw anything they may see. We have a bridge that they like to make sure that they're noting the water in there. Those are things that happen. Also in the top right corner, you see they're using some magnifying glasses. It had just rained just a little bit. And Miss Chris put a bug in the kids' ears. That's something that I did often. I would just walk in the classroom and say, you know, when it rains, worms come up. They're like, what? We got to go explore some worms. I'm like, looks like we have to explore some worms, Miss Shara. I think that's what we're going to do. And it worked out for a lot of them. And something else, so in my babe in the bottom, every 2 steps, down in a squat and back to her binoculars. And what I think the teachers started to find in these hikes and these journeys through the forest is that the children were ready and like intrinsically motivated to do whatever task, to use whatever tool. They're just ready to explore the forest. And I think that that helped spark some of these interests into the forest for teachers. So across the teaching teams that explored the forest, there were a lot of trail pivots, if you can imagine with me. For some teaching teams, it was really just getting them outside. Like oh, but it rained yesterday. I was like, yeah, we got rain boots. We bought rain boots for us. Let's go. And they're like, but these 2 don't have their jackets. We can't really go out. Okay. You know, and building that. Building past those hurdles sometimes. Like I said, we purchased some rain boots trying to encourage, I wanted them to splash in some puddles. I don't know, I want to splash in some puddles. So if it is raining, you know, in September, November around here.
And it's always raining in Atlanta.
It is always raining. But the rain and the cold, like there's something so, I don't know, gay woman about it, and I like it. So going out there like with my boots on, and they're just like, but I didn't wear my boots today, Miss Chris. And I'm like, ooh, they're in the closet. Let's go get them. Let's get it. So that was one part of it. Something else that kind of stuck out was, like I said, Fraser is an inclusive environment. And with it being an inclusive center, there can be like a lot of multiple variables finding a teacher at one time. And you know, it's a genuine concern to say I'm worried about these variables in the day that happened at one time, and then to still explore at our given time and the given place of the day. So we had to consider some of that. A lot of teachers didn't think that we had enough people or enough skill really to even go out. And as Gary is going to highlight in a few slides, is a lot of teachers struggled with the knowledge of why are we going outside in the first place? That rationale of we're out here to explore, but not to do lessons in the forest, and he'll highlight that later. And then, boop, boop, boop. Oh, and with Gary's team and I also walking the forest with classrooms, there has been like so much growth, but we'll talk about that in a minute. One thing that I did as an instructional coordinator was I tried to connect our monthly studies across the curricula, and that can also work in our with our forest curriculum. So for instance, I remember taking this picture early October, maybe-ish. No, early September, I'm so sorry. And the teacher really wanted some fake leaves in the classroom, which I loved it. And these children really loved this book about this tree that was turning colors throughout the seasons. And we were going to get ready to explore that soon. In September, there was a plant study that we did. And that took a lot of teachers aback initially anyway, because they say, why are we doing plants in September? Like, why don't we do plants in spring? And I was like, why wouldn't we do plants in September? Those same trees are still out there. Maybe those still plants are still out there. Maybe they just look a little different. Like, what could we still explore out there? Again, trying to bridge that gap with that coaching model. Anyway, this picture on the right is, I think, taken January, February, of the kids still exploring the same trees around. And I didn't notate it, but my friend here is the same friend in the picture, but every time we're out, notates that same specific tree, or he notates there was one that had yellow, brown, and golden leaves. It was yellow and golden. And he needed to make sure he pointed that out every time we went to the forest. Loved it.
So one of the first things we had to really shift teachers' practice around was the fact that it was learning in nature versus learning with and about nature. And so here's a picture of the children were making these hats and had painted these hats, and the teacher was well prepared to take everything outside from the classroom. And she put down this is early in the process, she put down the mat to make sure the kids didn't get dirty. They're like, okay. And then she had all the straw she pulled out, she had the hat she pulled out, and the kids were gluing. And I remember debriefing with her and saying, why did you do this outside? Like, why would you haul all this stuff outside? And so the lessons often started with teachers just wanting to do inside activities outside. And we really had to make sure we organized the lessons to be learning with and about nature. And one of the strategies we found pretty early was that we really found the scavenger hunts were an important way of getting children and teachers to observe the forest around them, and really to support that big idea around how one learns outside, because shifting the focus from just taking stuff outside. Like one time a teacher pulled water outside to do a sink and float activity with natural materials, but it made no sense because there's a creek, and it was like, wait a second, there's other ways to do this activity. And so we really had to just kind of demystify the process for teachers. And this way of looking, and you can see the young children were just fascinated by finding things and checking off the list. And then we supported their early numeracy and early literacy skills, because integrating with the curriculum was so important as well. So really just learning with and about nature became the focus of all these lessons. And so whenever we would roll out a new lesson for teachers, it was always about that process, and then about connecting inside and outside. Last slide, I promise.
So yes, I can say that I think we're in a decent place after a year of coaching, of supporting, of modeling, of getting them outside. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from the teachers. Across the board, I hear things like, they're actually relaxed. I was like, yeah, right? It's crazy. You go outside and relax, and you come back in, you're still relaxed. How does that work? It's awesome. So I guess those are very, very much mind-blowing things for teachers in the profession, because of course you have a certain brain on, but we really need you to turn that off sometimes with the children. And just love the idea of being again. And I think with the help of our curriculum, it is helping. And teachers see that the children simply adjust to the world around them, and it's simply settling. Thank you for talking to us at TED.
Thank you.
So we have time for a question, and so it's from an anonymous person, but the question was, what observations did you have on COVID's impact, its adaptation of to your program, and your recovery from it?
Yes, so, thanks, sir. So in our school in general has been going through this mask policy mask updates. I'm sure we're all doing it. It was a struggle even for me as the coach. I'm like, maybe they could take their mask off for, while they're going up the hill. Like they're going up a hill. And a lot of teachers are just like, well, that's just policy, I don't want to, and they have a sign. And so unfortunately that was some feedback in our exploration even outside in the forest. Yeah, do you have anything else?
I would just say that being outside was really great during COVID because it was obviously a very stressful year and a half, 2 years now. And it's still, because little outbreaks are, happen and classrooms shut down. So it's really helpful to have that outside time because it's like, look, we're all kind of safe out here. So let's get outside more. Is kind of how we approached it.
That too.
Gary, Christiane, thank you so much for taking time with us today. And hopefully you'll corner them. Don't let them out of here. Corner them and exchange information and maybe even schedule a visit while you're in town. Thank you so much.
Thank you.